Sergeant Thomas Whitlock stood at his post with the stillness of a man carved from stone.
Wait, Sophie!
But on one quiet morning, a 10-year-old girl walked straight toward him. She raised her hand, and what happened next left the...
Outside Buckingham Palace, in the pale gold light of an early September morning, Sergeant Thomas Whitlock stood at his post with the stillness of a man carved from stone. 12 years in the Queen's Guard had taught him everything. How to stand for hours without so much as a twitch. How to let sweat run into his eyes without blinking it away. How to become, for all practical purposes, invisible in his own uniform. Tourists loved to test him. They waved hands in his face, told jokes, even once released a small dog directly in front of his boots. Thomas never so much as breathed differently. His fellow guards called him the Statue. He wore the nickname like a medal. That particular morning, the crowd outside the palace gates was thinner than usual. A smattering of early tourists, a school group in matching blue jumpers, a street performer setting up a violin case for coins. Thomas scanned the scene out of habit, though nothing ever really happened. Not to him, not anymore. Then he saw her, a girl perhaps 10 years old, standing apart from the school group, watching him with an intensity that made the hair on his neck rise. She wore a coat too big for her, sleeves rolled at the cuffs, and she held herself with the stiff, deliberate posture of someone trying very hard not to shake. She began walking toward him. A teacher called out, "Sophie! Sophie, come back to the group." But the girl didn't stop. She crossed the invisible line that tourists were meant to respect, stepped directly in front of him, and before anyone could react, she slapped him across the face with everything her small body could muster. The sound cracked through the courtyard like a rifle shot. Thomas didn't move. Training held even as his cheek burned scarlet and his eyes watered involuntarily from the sting. Around him, the crowd erupted into gasps, phones rising, the teacher sprinting forward in horror, apologizing before she'd even reached the girl. "Sophie! Oh my God, I am so sorry, officer, I don't know what's gotten into her." But Sophie didn't run, didn't cry, didn't look ashamed. She stood her ground, chest heaving, glaring up at him with an anger far too old for her face. "You're supposed to protect people," she said, her voice cracking but fierce. "That's your whole job, and you didn't protect him." A crack in the statue, something in her words, made Thomas do what he had never once done in 12 years on duty. He broke his stance. He looked down. "Who?" he asked quietly. "Who didn't I protect?" The teacher grabbed Sophie's shoulder. "Sir, I am so sorry, we'll leave immediately." "No," Thomas said, holding up a hand. "Please, let her speak." The courtyard had gone eerily quiet. Even the violin player had stopped tuning his instrument. Sophie's lip trembled, but she held his gaze. "My uncle, Gareth Hollis. He was homeless. He used to sleep near the gates over by the side wall every night for almost a year. Everyone ignored him. Everyone. But he told me once that the guards watched everything, that nothing happened near this palace without you lot seeing it. He said if anything ever happened to him, someone would know. Someone would help." Thomas's stomach dropped. He remembered. 3 months ago, Sophie continued, tears finally breaking free. He collapsed, right there, right by that wall. And nobody came. Nobody helped him. He died there alone. And you were probably standing right here the whole time doing nothing, because that's your job, to stand there and do nothing. The first twist, the accusation hung in the air like smoke. Thomas felt his chest tighten, not with anger, but with something far heavier. He did remember Gareth Hollis. Everyone on his rotation remembered Gareth, a gentle, soft-spoken man in his 50s who used to hum old folk songs to himself at night. Thomas had spoken to him more than once during quiet hours, had shared his tea with him on freezing nights when protocol technically forbade it. "I remember your uncle," Thomas said, his voice low. "I remember him very well." Sophie's face twisted. "Then why didn't you help him?" "Because I wasn't on duty that night," Thomas said. "I was in hospital myself. I'd been in a car accident 4 days earlier. I didn't even know he'd passed until I came back to work 2 weeks later." Sophie faltered, the certainty in her eyes wavering for the first time. That's not what people said. People said the guards just watched him die." "People say a lot of things," Thomas said gently, "especially about people they've decided not to look at closely." The second twist at that moment. An older guard, a warrant officer named Reginald Combs, silver-haired and broad-shouldered, stepped out from the guardhouse drawn by the commotion. His eyes landed on Sophie, and something in his expression shifted immediately from alarm to recognition. "Sophie," he said softly.
"Sophie Hollis."
The girl turned, startled. "You know my name?" Reginald knelt down, ignoring every rule about a guard-breaking formation in public view. "I was the one who found your uncle that night. I called the ambulance. I stayed with him until they arrived, and I rode with him to the hospital because I didn't want him to be alone." Sophie stared at him, stunned into silence. "He didn't die on the street," Reginald continued. "He passed away 6 hours later in hospital with proper care, with dignity. I know because I was the one who contacted the shelter to try to find his family. I never received a response. I'm sorry it took this long for that message to reach you." Sophie's mother, who had arrived breathlessly, having been called by the school, pressed a hand to her mouth. We were told he died alone, on the street. That's what the coroner's report said, roughly. We never knew anyone had been with him. The third twist, the truth. Beneath the truth, Reginald's expression grew heavier. "There's something else you should know," he said. "Something the report wouldn't have included, because it's not the kind of thing anyone writes down officially." He glanced at Thomas, who gave a small nod, as if he already suspected what was coming. "For the better part of a year, several of us on this rotation used to look out for Gareth," Reginald said. "Officially, we're not meant to interact with anyone loitering near the palace grounds. It's against protocol, full stop. But your uncle wasn't causing trouble. He was just a man who had nowhere else to go. So we broke the rules. We brought him food when we could, extra blankets in winter, when the cold got bad enough that regulations became something we were willing to risk our careers over." Sophie's mother started crying quietly. "The night he collapsed," Reginald continued, "I wasn't supposed to leave my post, but I did. I broke 12 years of training in about 4 seconds because some things matter more than standing still. I called for help and I stayed with him holding his hand until the ambulance came. And when the doctors told me later that he'd been given a full hour more of life than he otherwise would have had, enough time for him to wake up briefly, enough time for him to speak, I made sure that was passed along to the shelter, in case there was family." Sophie was crying now too, harder than before. "What did he say when he woke up?" Reginald's eyes glistened. He said, "Tell my sister's girl not to be afraid of me being gone. Tell her the guards were kind." The fourth twist, silence swallowed the courtyard. Somewhere behind them, a camera shutter clicked. Though no one seemed to notice or care anymore, Sophie turned back to Thomas, her small hands still trembling. Her fury melted into something rawer and more painful. Grief, finally given somewhere to land. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I hit you. I just needed someone to blame. I needed it to be someone's fault, because if it wasn't anyone's fault, then it just happened. And I couldn't accept that something that big could just happen to someone and nobody could stop it." Thomas knelt down to meet her eyes, ignoring the ache still throbbing in his cheek. "You don't have to apologize for grieving, Sophie. Grief doesn't always come out gently. Sometimes it comes out as anger, because anger feels like it has somewhere to go and sadness doesn't." "Will I get in trouble?" she asked in a small voice. "No," Thomas said. "Today, of all days, I think you've taught more people something true than I have in 12 years of standing perfectly still." The final twist, what came after and the weeks that followed. The story of the guard who was slapped by a grieving child spread, not through news headlines chasing scandal, but through something quieter and more lasting. Reginald Combs was invited to speak informally about the unofficial kindnesses guards had extended to a homeless man for nearly a year. Kindnesses that technically violated protocol, but that no commanding officer dared to reprimand once the full story became known. Modest charitable initiative was born from it. Guards at several London posts began quietly coordinating with local shelters, ensuring that people like Gareth Hollis were never simply background scenery to be stepped around, but people whose names were known, whose stories mattered. Sophie visited the palace gates every few months after that. No longer angry, no longer needing someone to blame, she would stand near the wall where her uncle used to sleep, sometimes leaving a small flower, sometimes just standing quietly. Thomas or Reginald, whoever was on duty, would offer the smallest, most human nod a Queen's Guard could allow himself, A silent acknowledgement that some rules, the ones about standing perfectly still and feeling nothing, were never meant to apply to everything. Years later, when Sophie herself was old enough to work, she took a position as a grief counselor specializing in homelessness outreach. Inspired, she often said, by two guardsmen who taught her that beneath even the stillest, most unshakable exterior, there is almost always a quiet act of kindness no one ever sees. People think the guards are trained not to feel anything, she said once in an interview about her work. But I learned that's not true. They're trained not to show it. There's a difference. And sometimes the kindest people are the ones standing perfectly still, doing everything they can where no one is watching.